Two guys of Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
All right. Little Feedback Friday here. If you missed the news of the morning, Adam Thielen released after 9 years with the Minnesota Vikings. We did a full breakdown on a live Purple Daily episode that you can find on the Purple Daily YouTube channel, Purple Daily podcast feeds on demand, so check those out. We got our guy Ross Brendel in for the vacationing Declan Goff here on this Mackey and Judd episode. And boys, we have just a huge batch of Vikings questions. You can always send us stuff through the SKOR North app. There's a feedback tab. It sends it directly to our emails. And so we try to get to as many as we can and stockpile what we can throughout the week here. Questions, concerns, critiques, speculation, whatever you have for us. So Judd, are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right.
Love it.
So Chris Noss chimes in and says, I'm more and more into the offensive side of the ball in terms of like off-season moves for the Vikings.
Sure.
Unless the Vikings want to move up and draft one of the big four quarterbacks, so to speak, I'd want to see them add more to the offense. I'm sure they'll sign some defensive players for Flores to run his preferred defense, but what if they sign a free agent wide receiver like a DJ Chark or Jacoby Myers, and then draft one in the first round as well?
Ooh.
Like a Zay Flowers or a Jordan Addison or somebody. If we're going to stick with Cousins again, or worse, if they resign him to an extension, he's not a big Cousins guy. It's Chris here.
Sense that.
Then load up on offensive weapons as much as possible. How would you like? Do you think they would do this? Do you think they would spend money on a receiver in free agency and also draft one in the first round?
I don't know if they would, but I appreciate where the thought process is coming from, though, because this is an offensive first team now, coached by an offensive guy. And it's not like you get to a certain point with receivers and are like, well, okay, that's too many receivers. Guys get hurt, guys break down. I don't think they would do this, but I will say this. That's my bias against how they've ordinarily operated, right?
Yeah.
So, like, would I be absolutely shocked if they did something that we didn't see coming? No. But if they were to sign a DJ Chark and then go out and draft one in the first round, I would be legitimately surprised. Wouldn't you? I
would too. Yeah, I do think there's a really good chance that they either make a splash in free agency for a DJ Chark type, and or a first rounder. But no, I think spending on one and drafting one is neglecting the defense a little bit too much.
Agreed.
But it's going to be interesting.
And you do need to help the defense from a standpoint of, like, if you draft a player, hopefully that guy's, your cornerback or something like that for an extended period. So, there's no doubt that O'Connell probably learned his lesson a little bit in 2022 about not acknowledging what's going on that side of the ball enough. But I love the thought process of becoming like a legitimate team that can just offensively strike.
Yeah. So another thought here too is just because this is a longer email that I kind of grabbed a chunk of, and he was basically saying eliminate the excuses for the Cousins Crusaders. Put weapons around him. There should be no excuses of like, well, Thielen wasn't that good anymore, because there's always something, right? And there's Patrick Mahomes has things, right? They had to kind of patchwork after the Tyreek Hill trade. They had to sort of patchwork the receiver plan. The running backs there have always been kind of a revolving door, and their defense has been up and down. So like every team has something that they're trying to overcome and plug a leak in. What I find kind of amazing about Kirk Cousins' career, he has played with 10 multi-time Pro Bowl skill position players alone in his career. Forget about like offense, defense. So not just like one-time Pro Bowler, but he's played with 10 guys who've made multiple Pro Bowls in their career. Skill position players. Dalvin Cook and Alfred Morris at running back. Now, Alfred Morris was a 3-time Pro Bowler early in Kirk's career. The year that he was a starter for half the year, where they went 1-4. And then he was still on the team for a couple years after that when Kirk was the full-time starter. 4 multi-time Pro Bowl tight ends, TJ Hawkinson, Kyle Rudolph, Jordan Reed, Vernon Davis, and 4 multi-time Pro Bowl wide receivers, Jefferson, Diggs, Thielen, Deshaun Jackson, And Pierre Garçon also, by the way, was not a multi-time Pro Bowler, but a very good receiver. So I'm not saying he's had perfect rosters. I'm not, the defense has been a disaster the last couple of years, but if anyone's arguing that Kirk just hasn't had enough weapons around him, he's actually had incredible weapons around him in his career.
Yeah, I've never even thought that. At least I could previously at times buy in a little bit more to the offensive line stuff, especially here with the Vikings. But I've never thought that it's a problem of weapons. I mean, hell, he got here and he had Diggs and Thielen. That was pretty damn good. I mean, until we saw Jefferson, we probably thought that was outstanding. And it was really good. So, yeah, I've never, and I don't even know that I've heard the Crusaders say that. Like, definitely heard about, he didn't have the pass protection. I don't know if I've heard much of he didn't have the weapons, because quite frankly, he's had a lot of great ones.
Yeah. So maybe it's a straw man argument, but it's a lot of weapons in an 8-year stretch. Okay, Doc chimes in here. He says, I just watched Kirk Cousins' interview with the Bussin' with the Boys podcast. First off, it was Kirk's agent who planned it out, not Kirk. 2, Kirk said he would take a contract with some of it non-guaranteed. And 3, and he kind of talked about how, as I did hear this podcast, he talked about how, well, my extensions have been not fully guaranteed. And Kirk is not that old in NFL terms because he didn't start for 3 years. So he's not that old, really. Wouldn't that be great if you could just not play until you're like 30 and then get those 10 years on the back end so you just play till you're 51?
Yeah, it doesn't work that way in sports, unfortunately.
Well, I didn't do anything until I was 26, and so therefore I can play till I'm 70. It's great. Washington is an even better franchise than the Vikings. Super Bowl wins, always in contention, etc. After they let Kirk go, how has their quarterback situation been? You want that for the Vikings? I cannot believe you guys are actually this dumb. I know many Vikings fans are. They wanted Tarkenton gone, Denny Green gone, because they felt they would never win a Super Bowl, and they wanted Moss gone because he took plays off. I think you just play up the Kirk hate for clicks.
Wait, hold on a second here. Speaking for myself, since the season came to an end, we're just talking about the progression plan. I keep saying
you're hating on Kirk.
The Kirk trade talk is fun, but I keep saying I fully expect him to be back next season. The Vikings are the ones who are making the decisions after that. So I guess I'm a little bit confused. Do you not want the Vikings to have a progression plan?
No.
Also,
no.
Did I hear that right? That the Commanders or Washington's a better franchise than the Minnesota Vikings?
Yeah.
I would throw that out since Daniel Snyder took over.
Well, if you're gonna rank just based on has this franchise won a Super Bowl before, and they've won, is it 2 or 3? Washington has at least 2. Okay, yeah, Washington. Okay, then I guess they're a better franchise. But they've also been a dumpster fire for the last 20 years. But that kind of plays into to me, that's actually a feather in Kirk's cap, which is, well, look what I did. I took this dumpster fire franchise to like 9 wins a couple times. So I don't really know what the point is there. Jake Kirsten says, I know we have talked so much about drafting the quarterback of the future and getting that rookie scale contract so we can build a team, which it's obvious Kirk doesn't care about. What about buying low on a quarterback that's already in the league and making well below or like making not very much money? If so, I have a name for you that you could probably get for a mid-round pick and possibly throw it. Well, this is before the Thielen thing. Possibly throw in Adam Thielen because I think Belichick would want him. How about Bailey Zappi? His cap hit is 0.5% of the team's total salary cap. He has 3 years left on his contract. Mac Jones is the starter, although there's been some buzz that maybe things aren't going well between Mac and the organization.
Yeah, I think Mac thought the franchise sucked because Matt Patricia was a moronic offensive coordinator.
Yeah,
I'm Team Mac on this.
So, well, what do you make of this? Because it's another angle, and it has happened before where teams are, they'll go get someone's backup or something. But I don't know, like with the Patriots, it's not like Mac Jones is Tom Brady. So if I'm the Patriots, I would need more than like a 4th round pick to trade Bailey Zappi, who might just wind up being my long-term starting quarterback.
Yeah, and I'm not saying, unless Kevin O'Connell tells me I've seen Bailey Zappi tape, and I am going to prove to you that this guy is headed straight to Canton once I get my hands on Bailey. I don't know. That's the type. I mean, I think they're after a legitimate like draft pick quarterback, first round. So yeah, I don't mind the thought. Like I like where he's coming from in some ways, but I don't think that's the answer. I think if that were the type of thing to happen, I think it's an incredibly pleasant surprise as opposed to a planned out draft pick.
Yeah.
Don't you?
Yeah, it's also I did some updated research on this. We can maybe do a show on this sometime on just like what's the percentage chance based on the round a quarterback is drafted in that they actually pan out. And a lot of these backups are just guys that you take in the 3rd or 5th or 7th rounds. I'm telling you, it is crazy how few of those guys become multi-year starters.
Yeah.
So to me, and this is my beef with if the Vikings decide, well, we're going to draft a quarterback this year, but it's not going to be a first-round quarterback. We're going to just kind of take a shot in the 3rd round again or the 5th round or something. That's such a crapshoot. It's those quarterbacks, the last 20 years, only pan out to be multi-year starters like 5 or 6% of the time. I get that you have to take shots because it's the most important position, but if you really want your franchise quarterback of the future, it's not going to be someone else's backup. It's probably not going to be a 5th round pick. It's going to be a 1st round shot. And even those are like 50% crapshoots, but you got to take the shot, right?
Yes.
All right, Tyler Apple chimes in here, says, keep the reckless speculation going, guys. If people want a close example of what the Vikings should do, look at what Doug Armstrong did recently to the St. Louis Blues after winning a cup in 2019. He traded aging stars for multiple picks and prospects. Keep up the good work and appreciate the content. You could speak more to that on the NHL side, but they won the Stanley Cup, and then they started punting away veterans.
Well, yeah, and they've done that in large part because they have not had a good season this season, and so he decided to trade veterans. But I mean, yeah, I am always for realizing when the end is either near or it's there, and so you don't try to milk things and you start to acquire draft picks. So yes, it's a good example. But I think in the Vikings case, you know what? I sort of like the proactiveness here because it's not like they got off to a bad start. The Blues were playing poorly and then said, let's parlay some of our veterans who helped us win a cup into draft picks. I like the fact that the Vikings are being proactive here and trying to shop guys, in releasing guys. Like this is again sort of knowing your circumstance before you have lost. You know, you're 1-5 to start the season and the trade deadline's near, and now we got to trade guys.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the approach here. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Gavin Rowe chimes in here via the SKOR North app. Question from a regular listener. If SKOR North is part of a national network, why don't you guys organize a live mock draft with a peer in each city drafting for the local team? Trades would be possible. It could be great content if it moved at a reasonable pace. We are lone wolves, baby. I mean,
we got no one.
We fall under the Hubbard Radio umbrella. So Hubbard Radio is the parent company for SKOR North, and they do own radio stations in 8 different markets around the country: Seattle, Chicago, St. Louis, Phoenix, DC.
Yep.
But the only other real sports property they have is 101 ESPN in St. Louis, which is the big sports radio station in St. Louis, and they don't have an NFL team. So it'd be awesome. It'd be great if we had like a, I don't know, there's Blue Wire and Locked On and some of these other, they have local shows on national networks, but we're doing pretty well as kind of a more of a lone wolf within Hubbard Radio.
I want to mock makes me very happy. That's all I need.
Intrigue me about this idea though is what if we, you know, like the mention was there's basically a representative for each team. What if Judd or you, Phil, was the Vikings representative, and then we're inside your, don't really love using this term, but I will, we're inside your war room and Judd is calling the other representatives and trying to rip them off in the first round trade? I think there's some good content there.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of work to me.
He's out. Never mind. Bad idea.
Sounds like a lot of work to me. You know what? Let's leave the mocking up to the mocking experts, and then we can read their work. That's the fun stuff.
Brad in Vadnais Heights says, help me understand the void years of a contract. So let's say player X leaves the team. So the Vikings have done this with a few players. Kirk.
Hunter right now.
Daniil Hunter.
He's got void years.
Patrick Peterson, I feel like, had a void year or something at one point. He says, help me understand the void years of a contract. Let's say player X leaves the team and has 2 void years left. Are we paying them for 2 years after they left, like the Mets pay Bobby Bonilla? Do we pay that even if they sign with a new team? Big fan of the show. Thanks for the great content. So, no, you're not actually paying the player. You're just paying your own cap hit. So the money that a player makes and the money as it lands on your books are on 2 separate tracks. They can be married. There's ways you could just say, all right, we're going to sign Kirk Cousins for a 3-year deal. It's going to be $30 million in base salary for all 3 years. It's going to be guaranteed. But usually what teams do is they do a signing bonus of some kind. And with a signing bonus, you can spread the money out equally, prorated throughout the duration of the contract. So you can give a guy $30 million in a signing bonus. He gets it right now. But if it's a 3-year deal, it would hit your books as 10 million, 10 million, 10 million. And then you can add void years. Is there a limit on how many void years you can add?
I have no idea, and I would eliminate them altogether. I do
so
not.
ridiculous.
I do not approve. It's basically a way to
buy it now, pay later is what it is.
Yeah, it's a legal way to do something that I think shouldn't be legal. If you can't afford it, don't buy it, because it's essentially in some ways a credit card, right? Well, like I'm buying something and I'm pushing the payments off as long as possible.
You're not paying interest on it. You are, but you're. It's like I tend to have a rule of thumb that, like we bought a couch a couple weeks ago.
You got a nice Vikings cushion behind you. I've been meaning to comment on.
Thank you. This is the old couch, by the way.
No, but the Vikings cushion, it's very apropos. It's nice texture to the show.
I'm loving the evolution of it. Every day it seems like there's something new or different behind you.
Yeah. So like you buy a couch, and if the sticker price is so high that you accept the payment plan, for instance, this is just me, okay? You can like finance your couch. Mm-hmm. To me, that's a red flag. Or like, maybe I shouldn't be buying the couch then. Maybe that couch is a little out of my price range.
It's very mature of you right there.
No? NFL teams are basically saying, well, it's going to be really tough to fit this player under our salary cap now. So let's add a couple of void years and we'll just deal with it later.
Yes.
That's pretty much what it is. All right, Tim Hamill chimes in, says, reaching out to give you guys credit for how you covered the Eric Kendricks news this week. He will go down as one of my all-time favorite Vikings players. It's so hard to see him go, but totally the right move. I think you guys did a good job of making sure the listeners knew how good of a player he was in his prime, and more importantly, what a good dude he is. Thielen, same way. I mentioned him in a previous email. I met him briefly on my visit to Minneapolis back in September. He was out walking his dog on a Saturday morning. It was the third best thing that happened on my trip. Number 1 was watching the Vikings beat the Packers. Number 2 was eating at Pizzeria Lola. It's a great spot. And number 3 was having a not too awkward conversation with Eric Kendricks while he's busy walking his dog. I know we're all guilty of just rooting for laundry. It is what it is, but I do appreciate when you guys take a moment to be grateful for the good guys who have worn our laundry. Judd does not care about any
What's
of
this person's name again?
Tim. Tim Hamill.
I got a question. So were you a Kendricks fan before your chance encounter, and like how did you stumble upon him? Like were you like trying to like find out where he walks the dog maybe so that you'd accidentally stumble? I'd like to know more particulars. Seems like a very, like if he said,
are you accusing Tim of stalking Eric Kendricks?
I'm just saying this. If Tim had just said, hey, Kendricks I went to the game, I'm walking out, he's in the player parking lot, I said, hey, we had a brief conversation, I'd be like, okay, cool. This sounds like a very odd chance encounter, though. The dude's walking his dog. I'd like to know more, Tim.
Tim, if you could respond to all of Judd's questions about your
how did
potential
it happen?
Stalkerish nature.
Or were you not a big Kendricks fan, and then you're like, oh my God, that's Eric Kendricks, and he's cool to you, and you're like, I'm a big fan.
I bumped into Eric Kendricks in Eric Kendricks' hallway in his house.
Exactly. He saw me looking in his window, and so
I said hi.
And we had a nice conversation.
And when the police came by, He was pretty cordial.
Except for the one shrub that jammed my leg as I was hiding in it. I had a great time.
He didn't press charges. I thank him for that. All right, let's see here. Adam Turner chimes in. Hey, just want to give some feedback before the Purple Daily Draft Party, which, by the way, April 27th, location TBD. We will let you guys know.
We're closing in.
Are we?
I've done some sleuthing. I can't say exactly where yet, but let me just say we're closing in.
Okay. Are we down to a select group, or do you think they're closing in on? Are negotiations happening with one particular place?
Negotiations are ongoing with one particular establishment.
Okay.
Internet sleuth, a Judd Zulgad. Sports dad sleuth.
Let's just say I'm the Schefter of bars.
So Adam says, I've gone to all 3 live events, the draft, the Dolphins, and the Commanders game. In my opinion, the most fun ones have been the ones at Surly, even with the bad weather, even though I forgot a jacket the first time. Surly is a great spot. Figured I'd put my 2 cents in. We love Surly, but the feedback we received from all of you guys was like 80% saying, if you could do it inside, especially in April when it's volatile, that would be the best. So
yeah, I think the one that we did for the Dolphins game, Phil, shortly after your dad passed away, so you weren't there. Omar, very, very smart man who owns the bar, said, yeah, this is a little bit difficult.
The tent's blowing over, our podcast stuff gets wet and rained on, and it just, it was tough.
I thought the one that we did for the Commanders Vikings watch party at the now defunct sports bar there on the first floor of MOA was great. Great turnout. Fans were fantastic.
Is that the most people that ever filled that bar? It must have been. If they went out of business that quickly after.
They went out of business like 2 weeks after, right?
Man.
I can't tell you guys how much FOMO I had of that. That was a day that I couldn't be there. I was coming back from a big row the boat, Sky Yuma, Go Gophers victory over Nebraska. Oh, man, was I jealous. That crowd brought it that day.
I feel like a lot of our coworkers didn't show up to these events in 2022. All right, we'll be making a list of all you internal haters.
Maybe that says something about the company, Phil.
Gophers,
and by the company, I mean you two.
Gophers, Nebraska, watch party, coolest thing in town.
Oh, did you not see Ethan Kaliak-Manis that day? Come on.
No, you know what? I did on my
I
did, Ross, on my television, and the next day I went to our watch party.
That's great. Derek Z chimes in. Really want to tell you guys how much I enjoy the Minnesota Sports Rewind episodes. Wow. So it's been like 3 years since we've done a Minnesota Sports Rewind. We do some Rewind episodes within the Purple Daily feed. But he says, I understand why this show was a cap casualty, but I have listened to all of the episodes multiple times. I'm 38 years old, a lifelong Minnesota sports fan. They are so educational for someone who remembers most of these events happening, but at the time wasn't necessarily super plugged into sports news outlets. I don't think we're going to revive that podcast, but I think especially in the summertime, we'll just like put a list together. We'll just do some Minnesota Sports Rewind episodes within like Mackey and Judd. We'll stash them on the SKOR North YouTube channel.
I feel like we did a good number of them that we don't need to repeat now too. Like I don't know how much, unless you give the franchise time to breathe. I don't know that there's a bunch more that we needed to get to.
We have like 15 or 20 left on a list that we haven't gotten to.
Do we really? Okay, then I stand corrected, and what I just said was absolutely wrong.
And you helped me make that list, so.
Dude, I'm 53. You know I forget stuff. I'm actually becoming sensitive about this because let's just say I texted something to you and Dex a couple days ago that was publicly announced, and I had completely forgotten.
I'm trying to think.
I'd rather not get into the specifics of it, and it's not important.
Are you okay?
But I got a note from Phil that just said Judd ! And Declan's like, this was announced. We talked about it extensively at the time.
Well, I think what happened was someone in this text thread, like 30 minutes beforehand, sent a link, and so you either just like missed the link or I don't know.
No, I'm getting old and forgetting crap I shouldn't forget.
You're not that old.
I know, but I'm forgetting stuff. And we all know that the brain starts to go earlier than we thought.
It's gonna be great when Judd just starts like repeating the same rant 4 times on a podcast. Judd, you've already ranted about that 3 times on this episode.
You feel free to tell me.
I'm gonna continue to push for foreign film rewind. I would love to see Judd's thoughts on movies with subtitles.
Maybe Judd and Royce can.
Dawn can. Yeah, Dawn and Royce love subtitle films. Sports Dad, not so much.
All right, this next one's from Salvador Estrada. Love that name. Salvador Estrada. Hey guys, notice you guys talk a lot about clearing cap space this year, But have you guys realized how much money we'll have in 2024 with all these cuts? We're going to have nearly $100 million in saved cap space in 2024, which means we can sign really good players and backload their contracts so their cap hit is low this year. Yeah, I get Jefferson and Darisaw deals are coming, and they'll make room for that. So this is an interesting point. And I went through, I plugged in some of the stuff from like the Thielen cut on overthecap.com. And I did like a Daniil extension and maybe like a Hawkinson extension. And Salvador's right. The Vikings are in line to have roughly $100 million in open cap space.
Yeah.
Depending on what, it'll probably be more like 85 or 90, depending on what they do with some of these free agent contracts or
right.
Jefferson, Thielen, or Darisaw. But if you have that much cap space for 2024, to Salvador's point, you could sign maybe an extra free agent or two next week or the week after.
Yep.
And shove money into 24 and 25, right?
And if you can also sign a guy who is coming out of his first contract, so it's more years, it's more expensive, but that's what I would want. So, like, I don't want short-term fixes here now. Like, the strategy to me screams of solidifying the future of the roster. So, yeah, but that's why I love the Thielen accepting the entire cap hit now, because clearing as much space as possible. And hell, you guys, if Kirk comes off the books, watch out. You're going to have an opportunity to really at least give yourself a fighting chance to set yourself up for success.
Yeah. Let's see here. This next one presented, by the way, by our friends at Dennis Kirk. So Dennis Kirk, it's been a long winter. Right, although I see the sun's trying to peek out today here. Motorcycle season and riding season will be back soon. Make sure your ride is ready with Dennis Kirk. Harleys, Indians, Metric Cruisers, sport bikes. You'll find what you need at DennisKirk.com so you can ride more and wait less. Over 180,000 parts and accessories in stock, clothing and helmets as well. Shipping is free for orders over $89. Order by 8 p.m. and they ship the same day. Everything you need for your ride at DennisKirk.com. What else we got here? Feedback Friday. David Rysted, been listening to you guys since the painful 2021 season. Big fan of the show. I inject it into my veins every day. Help me understand. During your offseason and free agency breakdowns, you talk about restructuring Brian ONeill. I understand how that would be helpful now, but isn't that just going to put us through more cap space pain in the next few years? Why not leave it how it is to make 2023 and beyond easier? I mean, this is the constant battle that front offices go through, right? Which is the temptation to free up space now and worry about next year and the year after later, because you're not guaranteed to have a job in 2 or 3 years anyway. So, it's a worthwhile point, but my guess is they're gonna restructure to make some more room now. They can restructure again at some point because it's a long-term contract.
And with a guy like this, that's pretty standard practice. So, like, if you're creating void years and you're basically saying, we know you're gone shortly, but we're going to take on those cap hits, that's where I think there's more of an objection. ONeill's contract, first of all, he's going to be hopefully here for quite some time. And second of all, look around the league. The standard practice is to build in room. So, for instance, my guess on ONeill's contract is that the restructure is fully expected and has been for quite some time.
Yeah.
Where with Kirk, you got to the problem with the cap is when you have to get creative. Not when you've created space to basically say, okay, here's what the contract looks like now, but in a year we're doing this. So it's less problematic to me with a player like that than when you're now trying to, let's bring Thielen back. Should we? He's a local guy. We've got to. So that's where you run into a much more dicey situation than on, for instance, a Brian ONeill contract.
Yeah. Brittany Fanning chimes in. Hey, heard a lot of woes from the PD crew on Greg Joseph this last season, and for good reason, but no chatter on the kicking situation yet this offseason. Would you guys explore potential kicker solutions for the Vikings? And what do you think the front office will do? So Greg Joseph is a free agent. I definitely think they're going to explore options here.
Yeah, it's a great point by Brittany.
I mean, he missed so many kicks. He missed the most extra points of any kicker in the league.
Yep.
Greg terrifies me. That was I stated that many times on Before We Die. I need you to make your extra points. If you're going to miss field goals here and there, that's okay. The extra point literally is what it is. It's an extra point. You're supposed to make that kick. I know they moved it back, almost 10 years ago now? 5 or 7? I can't remember. You got to make your extra points. You just have to.
At the very least, I'd like to see a competition. I don't think he should be gifted, if he comes back, I don't think he should be gifted the job again.
Yeah.
So, yes, great point. We probably should discuss it more. I won't be shocked if he's back, but if he's not, I'm not going to be upset about it.
Maybe they'll draft a kicker again.
Celebrate.
Maybe draft another kicker.
And then after a couple tough games, cut his ass.
Justin R says, can you guys explain to me what leverage Justin Jefferson has on his extension negotiations? You guys speculate about deals of $30 million per year or more and seem to presume he has all the leverage. If the Vikings offered him 4 years at $28 million per year right now with 70 guaranteed, do you really think he would turn it down?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, it can't be any simple. He has all of the power. Now, you can put it off. You can do that. The issue with that is, do you really want to potentially walk him up to free agency? I guess you could franchise him at that point. And my second question is, if you put it off, and you still desire a multi-year contract, which, by the way, you should, you're only putting off the inevitable payday and increasing it. So
yeah,
make no mistake, Justin Jefferson's good enough that he has the leverage.
Yeah, and I get what you're saying, which is, well, football's a volatile sport. You could tear your knee up or something. And yes, that could happen. But at his age, he's going to definitely roll the dice. Like if the Vikings lowball him, and I don't think they will. I think they're just going to sign him to some ridiculous contract and be done with it. But if they lowball him, he will absolutely just roll it forward into the next year. Like he's gonna bet on himself. And the Players Association, I don't think would allow him to take anything other than the next biggest wide receiver contract, right? There'd be a lot of pressure there.
And we're talking about a top 5 player at his position in the entire league. How many guys have the Vikings had? Moss, perhaps, at one point?
Peterson.
But who fit into that class in their prime.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, Daniil Hunter, but then he took a discounted deal, which kind of goes in the face of this. But then he dragged his feet and almost held out and has been mad about it ever since. So anyways, all right, that's your feedback episode here. Just a crazy week on Purple Daily of content, everything from Eric Kendricks, Adam Thielen, and those episodes to the draft speculation, and then all kinds of Wild and Wolves and Twins discussions on Mackey and Judd. So thank you guys for hanging out with us here on Mackey and Judd. We've got you covered. If Vikings news breaks this weekend, we'll be all over it on Purple Daily. Otherwise, we'll see you on Monday. Oh, you have a bonus scoop coming up today still on the Mackey and Judd feed with our guy Doogie. So
yes, sir.
More to come, and we'll see you guys either this weekend or Monday. Thanks for hanging.